Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say I have Fernando here with us, who is a Human Centered
I'm very
Designer and
good.
Innovator. How
Thanks,
you
Tom.
doing,
How are you?
Fernando? Yeah, great, buddy. Fernando, can you start off by telling everyone a
Sure,
little bit about
absolutely.
yourself and
I
your
think
career today,
the
please?
first thing I would say is that as Mauro Porcini, Chief Design Officer of Pepsi Cola, says, I am I believe I am an ambassador for the human beings. So that means in a business environment, I work as a service designer, and really the main thing I do is take a human centered perspective, open up the organization, look at everything that comprises it, the different actors, the systems, the process, all the components, and try to tailor it as much as possible to the people, to the users who are actually receiving those services and products. And being service designer can be a little bit complex, but I'd like to share with you some key concepts that I think describe it quite nicely. Yeah, so there's a
Please, yeah.
few key aspects. So one of them is being able to have a holistic view. So that means um, looking broadly at the organization and seeing where the connections and the nodes between the different nodes are, and then also having the ability to zoom in and zoom out, looking at things very closely, but also being able to take a step back and having a broader perspective. Um, Also, the concept of back end and front end, trying to remove all the complexity in the front end and add it to the back end so that it's a seamless experience for the users. Simplification is also a big one. So, these days companies have such intricate systems, and it's really about making things leaner for the people who are using the services. And last but not least, one of the concepts I like to highlight is this idea of co-design. So whether multidisciplinary cooperation between um, workers from different backgrounds, so whether that's IT, whether that's the project managers, just bringing everybody together to in service of the humans and the clients.
Love that. What skills? What would you say is your main strength then, Fernando? Like what separates your work
Yeah.
and how
So
you
from
operate
a
to others?
professional point of view, I think I'm very knowledgeable in terms of design thinking, which is really the foundation, the basis of service design, and it goes through different stages. So it moves from research, which is really all about understanding the people's needs, wants, behaviors, and attitudes, all the way to um, defining the actual problem, the ideation of the solutions of the problems you found, prototyping and testing. And that is made up of a number of different techniques you can use. So these are very designy words, but um, things like interviews, benchmarks, surveys, journey mapping, service blueprints, personas, empathy maps, affinity diagrams, prototyping, testing. So these are all the kind of things we would use on a daily basis to 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 deliver on the design thinking methodology.
Brilliant. And I suppose for anyone listening, is there any kind of UX or design approaches that you'd recommend to businesses, or any pitfalls you've seen that make you think, okay, this is being done incorrectly? Is what do you see as the common denominator there?
So I think, for example, one of the pitfalls which generates pain points derives from the fact that often companies will work in silos. So they won't the different teams won't talk to each other. They'll use different channels. They'll have different information. There's no alignment in that regard. So that means that the clients will often notice that. Will often notice a disconnect between the different departments, and that also, in addition to generating a worse experience, it also sends the wrong message about the company, because it looks like we're not working as closely together as we should.
Yeah, that's really well answered. And is there any kind of campaign work or anything that you're really proud
Yeah.
of that you'd like to talk
So
about with
I
us?
think a really cool one was when I worked in the insurance industry. Um, it we were tasked with defining the omni-channel strategy, and what that means is that the company had the ambition to communicate to the clients in the same way that they communicated to them. So that means that the same channels, the same type of tone, um, being able to answer their queries efficiently. And so, in order to deliver on that, I had to kind of open up the company, look at all the different systems, processes, actors, channels, touch points, different roles, and see how that all kind of came together. Which was really crazy, because you can imagine in a big company it just goes just about anywhere. In order to kind of surface that complexity and mold it in some kind of framework, I came up with this idea of a Rubik's cube. It's a little bit abstract, but I envision the different touch points as the little squares that comprise the Rubik's cube, and then the colored walls as channels, and then especially the mechanism inside, which rotates the Rubik's cube, that represented the omni-channel, the capacity to be 360, turn and adapt to satisfy the client's expectations.
Brilliant. Yeah, really well answered. And is there any particular system or platform you use to bring in all the different omni-channel areas into?
So, I mean, there's a number of different tools we use, and I try not to get too hung up on the tools, because I try to make the design drive tools rather than the other way around. But just about, for example, Visio for the processes themselves. I think Miro and Mural, very famous, very popular, are really good at helping you visualizing, especially everything at once. Um, because if you have things in separate folders, then you're not aware about how things connect. So being able to see everything at once in real time with colleagues is excellent. And definitely things like Figma when it comes to prototyping and driving those and creating those beautiful interfaces. That's really the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And is there any particular softwares that you use for yourself, like tools on your computer or anything? You've obviously mentioned processes, Miro, and things like that, but is there any particular software
Yes,
you
I
use
think
to do your work?
Figma is really powerful. I think it's come a long way. I mean, you have others such as Envision or Sketch. I think Figma just keeps updating, and it has so many properties that you can go into so much detail and be able to visualize those different representations.
And yeah, tell me a little bit more about Figma for anyone unfamiliar. Can you tell us just a little bit of breakdown of what Figma is and how
Yeah.
businesses might be able to
So
use it?
I mean, before, I think it's kind of, it also goes back to agile methodology, whereby design methodology, some design principles, which is before you as a company, before you invest, for example, in creating a website or a digital product, an app of any sort, it's 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 really important to get an idea of what that looks like, and be able to test it with users early on, so that if there are any problems, you can make modifications as quickly as possible, and really um, deliver on what the customers are expecting from your product or service. So Figma will allow you to actually make the designs firstly with the wireframes, what's called low fidelity. Just some quick sketches to get an idea of what the interface is going to look like, and if we're talking in a online project, and then as you move forward, as you do more iterations, being able to modify and refine and create a more sophisticated design on Figma. So allow you to go all the way from your basic wireframes to prototyping, where you can actually click and see all the designs and how it works before you go into implementation and talk to the software and start building the thing.
Love it. And is there any particular areas or place you go
Yeah,
for
so I
new
think
insights?
luckily there's just so many good sources out there. So one of my favorite designers is at the beginning is Mauro Borcini, chief design, say, and he'll put a lot of content up there, and he's just so passionate about the discipline, and he's really inspiring. So he'll be one of my go to. But there's just so many things, you know. The design community is growing and growing fast. There's so many books. For me, this is service design thinking and service design doing is really the Bible, the manual for anybody who's looking to get into service design. But I mean, anywhere has the potential for inspiration. So you can go to a shop, whether that's a gas station, a museum, um, just about anywhere really, and you can, if you have that human centric perspective, you can start to think, you can see where things are falling short in terms of the customer experience. So you know, Sam Walton, for example, you know, the founder of Walmart, he had a global conference with all his employees, and he told them, look, when people go through the door, smile. And it's such a small thing, but it's such a powerful thing. And I'm always surprised when companies invest millions and millions and then they fail in the most basic things, you know, whether that is poor communication, that people don't understand um, what what the service um, will do for them, what it looks like, or whether that is when they're going to receive certain products. It just, I find it really astonishing because it's really quite simple to get it right if you're just constantly thinking about the customers and the people.
Yeah, that's so well said as well. Love that Walmart example. And you yourself, for a second, Fernando, is there any areas you're looking to upskill into and learn more
Yeah,
about?
so I mean, in my case, in terms of soft skills, I'm really eager to learn more actually about storytelling and sales. That's probably not the answer you were expecting, but I think it's really important for us as designers to explain the value we bring to the table. And it's quite a new discipline, so a lot of people might not be familiar with what we do. So being able to explain things and show the results and the visuals and the value we can bring is really important. And in terms of hard skills, there's uh it's just a lifelong learning really. But for example, UI is something I'm interested in. Um and that's just one of the many areas that comprises design.
Love it. And let's talk the industry as a whole, the digital industry. Is there anything that you see coming in the future that you want to talk about? Anything you're keeping an eye on that you think is going to be quite a big impact to your industry or the
Yeah,
wider
so I
industry?
think one of the areas which is really growing is, for example, in the financial industry which I work in, but also just generally is the whole vulnerable customers, vulnerable people, you know, people who have discapacities, whether that's where they have difficulties reading, listening, um, or mobility. It's not only morally necessary for us to take them into consideration, but it's becoming more and more clear that it's going to be a legal mandate. So that means that, you know, there's just no choice. You have to think about these vulnerable clients. But also, I think that, you know, there's with AI, for example, um, now you're seeing the ability to recognize facial expression. So that just takes empathy to the whole new level. You know, it's not only being able to get into the shoes, but also actually read their facial expressions to see if they're comfortable or not with the service you're delivering. But then, you know, voice recognition is also a big one, for instance, because we're more and more used to giving voice commands, and that means that you also have to design for that. You have to think about the scripts, you have to think about the tone, and that's just going to keep growing in the future. I'm not in, yeah, it's so hard to forecast the future, but I think those areas are very promising.
Yeah, very interesting. And lastly, Fernando, we always end the show on this question, trying to understand yourself as a person a little bit more. Um, if you could boil up one personality trait that you have yourself that you could pass on to others, what would that be, and
Yeah,
why?
so I think it's probably a combination between um, being empathetic and being creative. I think when I actually started doing my masters and different courses I engaged in, I realized that the people who are interested in design share those qualities, because you have to really be able to um, dig deep into the people's feelings, but also have the creativity and the boldness to come up with new solutions and innovative ways of improving the services and products.
Yeah, what a great answer. Fernando, if anyone wants to reach out to you, I'm sure they will, especially when it comes to the complexities of building complete design systems. How
Yep.
can
So
they
you
get in
can just
touch with you?
look me up in LinkedIn. It's probably an easy way. Look for Fernando Pascual, Bank of Ireland. I think I'm the only one, so you'll probably find it easy to to find me. Yeah.
Brilliant. But Fernando, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks everyone for watching
Thanks a
and
lot, Tom.
listening.
Pleasure
Thanks
being
all.
here. Take care.
Cheers, buddy.